You know me, I like to start with a short prayer. So won't you join me in a prayer? Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us. Melt us, mold us, fill us, use us. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us. Amen. Well, it's been a while, and I'm happy to be back in the pulpit today with you. Let's see how God might use us. Grateful for this time together. Let's get right to it. Do you love me? That's the question Jesus asks Peter. Do you love me? That's the question Jesus asks me. Do you love me? That's the question Jesus asks you and every Christian. Kind of personal, don't you think? Puts us right on the spot. Imagine Jesus actually saying that to me and to you right here, right now. Carol, daughter of Elton, do you love me? Fill in your name and imagine now Jesus saying to you, do you love me? In the conversation between Jesus and Peter that I'll read from Scripture in just a few minutes, Jesus doesn't ask the question once. He asks the question 3 times. Why 3 times? What could Jesus possibly be getting at in asking the same question in the same conversation 3 times? What's the point? Usually, repetition means that we're trying to emphasize something or gain reassurance about something. Since Jesus, we know, already knew the answers to the question that he asks, he does not need any reassurance. So what might Peter need reassurance of? And where in our lives, in this point in time, might we need reassurance? You might remember that in the days and hours leading up to Jesus' crucifixion, he tried to prepare his disciples, even going so far to say that one of them would betray him. Peter, who tends to be one of the more vocal disciples, expressed shock, indignantly asking, "Who?" Jesus, of course, didn't say. And Peter, in typical Peter style, filled the silence by boldly saying that he would never do anything like that, but that he would stick with Jesus no matter what happened. To which Jesus answered that before the rooster crowed twice, Peter will have denied him 3 times. And of course, isn't that exactly what happened? After Jesus was betrayed, arrested, and taken away, Peter followed, hanging back, only following at somewhat of a distance. Then he huddled around a charcoal fire where several people recognized him as having been with Jesus. But when they asked him if he knew this man, Jesus, Peter denied any relationship, having anything at all to do with him. 3 times he was asked, 3 times he answered no, more emphatically each time. And just as if it was planned, on cue, the rooster crowed a 2nd time. And Peter instantaneously knew what he had done. That he had done what Jesus predicted he would do, what he had said he would never do. Peter was mortified. Scripture tells us he fell to his knees and wept bitterly. Peter tries to get over his guilt and shame, but he is deeply troubled by what he has done. Having betrayed, he sees his denials as a kind of betrayal of Jesus. He doesn't know quite what to do with himself after Jesus' death and resurrection. So he returns to the life that he knew before he had become Jesus' disciples, fishing. We can imagine that Peter enjoyed the life of a fisherman, the beauty, the wide open spaces, the freedom of the outdoors, the company of the other guys, the other fishermen, the warm sun on his face, the thrill of casting the net, the eager waiting, the strength of his arms and legs and back as he and the others in the crew haul in their catch, the satisfaction of a good day's work. And that's what's going on when Jesus makes a post-resurrection appearance on the shore of the Sea of Tiberias. They don't recognize Jesus at first, but after a fruitless night of fishing, Jesus calls out to them to cast their nets on the other side of the boat. They do, and all at once their nets are bursting full of fish. They make their way to the shore, and while they're coming in, Jesus builds a charcoal fire and cooks them breakfast. Delicious, perfectly grilled. It's Jesus cooking here, so the grilling is done perfectly. Perfectly grilled, delicious fish and bread. A festive scene, but not without some apprehension, at least from Peter's standpoint, for he's still struggling with the guilt of his denials from when he stood around the last charcoal fire. Everyone has eaten their fill, and we pick up the conversation in the Gospel of John, chapter 21, verse 15. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." A second time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter felt hurt because he said to him a third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and to go wherever you wished. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not want to go." He said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And after this, he said to him, "Follow me." This is the word of the Lord, so thanks be to God. Do you hear how Jesus asking Peter the same question 3 times is like Peter denying Jesus 3 times? I think we can see the connection. Did Peter? Listen again. He said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" Peter felt hurt. This is important. Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" Remember what happened after Peter realized that he had denied Jesus 3 times? He was hurt. He fell to his knees and wept bitterly. In both cases, it was the truth of Peter's relationship with Jesus that brought the hurt to the surface. Peter loved Jesus, Jesus loved Peter. Their relationship was what made Peter's denial and Jesus' repeated questioning so painful. We're not hurt by what we do not care about. Each time Jesus asked Peter, he called him by name. You probably noticed that part of the repetition, assuring Peter that he knew exactly who he was talking to. Simon, son of John, not just any Peter, but this specific Peter, the one who was right in front of him. Simon, son of John, that Peter, the one, the only. When Jesus speaks to me, when Jesus speaks to you, he knows exactly who he's talking to. Don't worry that he might have me or you confused with someone else. Sometimes I've wished that Jesus had me confused with someone else, but so far that has not been the case. Jesus knows exactly who we are and calls each of us by name. He is, after all, the Good Shepherd. He knows all we've gone through, all we are going through, all we've done, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and oh yes, the betrayals. And he's still talking to us. Yes, it might hurt at times, but feel the hurt, weep bitterly if you must. But whatever you do, remember that the hurt points to the relationship. Peter would not have been hurt if his relationship with Jesus wasn't important to him. Because he loves Jesus, his denials hurt. Because he loves Jesus, the repeated questioning hurts. When Jesus asks Peter, "Do you love me?" time and again, he's leading him like a good shepherd, step by step by step, to let the hurt go and hang on to the relationship. It's important that we too let the hurt, the shame, the guilt, whatever you want to call it, let it go. Hang on to the relationship. The relationship we have with Jesus. At all costs and through all hurt, whatever comes, hang on to that relationship. Because Peter holds on to his relationship with Jesus, he doesn't have to carry the hurt anymore. He's already answered the question 3 times. And when we look closely, we see that it's Jesus who carries the conversation after Peter feels the hurt. Jesus tells him how he will go on to live and serve in such a way that his death will honor God. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Around the year 65, 66, 67 of the Common Era, during a very vicious reign in Rome, the reign of Emperor Nero, Peter, having been a strong and dynamic vocal witness for the Lord for years and years, was arrested and sentenced to crucifixion. When the time came, Peter insisted on being crucified upside down because he believed he wasn't worthy to be crucified exactly like Christ. An expression of humility, not guilt. Because Peter had let the hurt go and held on to the relationship. Jesus ends the conversation assuring Peter once again that he knows all about him, past, present, and future. He has a job for him for the rest of his life. And the next time we hear about Peter in the book of Acts, he's fully into his calling, preaching in such a way that thousands of people give their lives to Christ and join the church. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that. No doubt, among those thousands, a vast majority were ready to let the hurt go and to pick up the relationship with Jesus and hang on to it for dear life. Once Peter realized that he had already answered the question, he could hear the rest of what Jesus was saying. Feed my lambs, tend my sheep, feed my sheep. Peter could hear that Jesus wanted him to be all that he had made him and called him to be, to take a leadership role in the church, to serve as he had served. Jesus gently and patiently, firmly and persistently showed Peter that the relationship they had was far more important than anything Peter had done that he wished he hadn't done. Out of that relationship, founded, grounded, and grown in love, everything else emerges. You see, it's not that we don't betray Jesus. We do, repeatedly. But we don't need to hang on to what we've done wrong because we've already answered the right question. Jesus wants us to let the hurt go and hang on to our relationship with him, for only then can we be the people who he made and called each and every one of us to be. When Peter let the hurt go and held on to his relationship with Jesus, he was free to be all that God made and called him to be. His life, in fact, became a manifestation of his love for Jesus. His words of love were matched by a life of love. What about us? How will we answer Jesus when he asks us, as I believe he does as a regular basis, do you love me? We might get caught up in assuming Jesus knows we love him. But when he persists, my prayer is that we realize Jesus is leading us to let the hurt go and hang on to the relationship so that we can hear Jesus speaking directly to us, to each and every one of us, as he spoke to Peter. Tend my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my lambs, follow me. Amen.